Hello and welcome to the EU Parliament in Brussels. I've been here all day, and what a coincidence that Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, has also been at the European Parliament today. So it's been about 45 minutes since he finished his session with MEPs, answering questions about privacy, data, and also Cambridge Analytica. So I'm going to brain dump and give you my initial reaction to what I think, how he performed, how our political leaders performed, and also what he said. Some big statements and some big news released today around Facebook. Also, interestingly, we are now going to get the exact same as that we have on web browsers, the clearing of cookies on Facebook. So if you don't want Facebook to remember any of your data, any of your activity, this is coming. We know that we can clear cookies and browser memory and data that's already been stored there on browsers, but that is now coming to Facebook. I guess the European leaders eagerly awaited Mr. Zuckerberg's arrival. There's been lots of conversations, high anticipation here in Brussels all day about what he might say. The format was very different as to what we saw in Congress a number of months ago. So what we saw today here in Brussels was a number of politicians, MEPs representing the different political groupings. So you had independents, you had S&D, you had ALDE, you had the EPP group, who are the largest political grouping here. And they all had 3 minutes to make their statements and to ask questions. Manfred Weber, who is the chairman of the EPP group, he started proceedings and he asked 3 questions that actually were asked by citizens on the EPP Facebook page. And those questions were around, was Cambridge Analytica actually an isolated incident? Can you convince the citizens of the EU member states that there aren't other incidents of Cambridge Analytica that perhaps might come out? So Mark Zuckerberg said that right now they have removed third-party access to their API from tools that potentially were taking third-party data from individual users on Facebook. And they said that, they'll try and guarantee that it won't happen again. There was also some conversations around the fact that Facebook is a monopoly in Europe. So if you remember, Mark Zuckerberg was asked by a congresswoman, her name escapes me right now, but he was asked by a congresswoman in the United States, who is your competitor in the US? And he couldn't answer. So Manfred Weber put it to him. He said, Mr. Zuckerberg, do you have any competitors in Europe? We all know that you own Instagram. We all know that you own WhatsApp. But we are a strong bunch of institutions that value competition law. And we know that the European institutions are very, very strong on competition law. So this was a very interesting approach by Manfred Weber. I also got the opportunity to interview Manfred Weber along with the other international journalists who were here in Brussels today for the arrival of Mr. Zuckerberg and his address. And I put that question to Manfred Weber: were you happy with the response from Mr. Zuckerberg? And he said he wasn't convinced at all. He said he respected and he welcomed him for coming to the institutions and addressing European citizens vis-a-vis the MEPs, but he said he wasn't convinced entirely. He did say that GDPR is the highest level of data protection right now in the world. And Mr. Zuckerberg said that he would indeed be complying with GDPR. So for all of those Facebook marketers and digital marketers out there who have asked this question thousands of times, because I've seen it in Facebook groups, in forums, and on my own news feed, Facebook are saying that they are absolutely going to comply with GDPR. Some other interesting things that came up, and the whole arena of fake news and protecting democracy. when it comes to election. Mark Zuckerberg admitted that they were very, very slow to the chase when it came to the infiltration by the Russians of the US elections. He admitted that they were slow to react and that they are now putting new procedures in place because there's a number of elections coming up. Obviously, we've got European elections next year, we've got elections in Brazil and also in other countries. And one of the things that they have already rolled out, and they're testing it here, well, I'm not in Ireland, but they're testing it in Ireland, and some of you may have seen it, is a transparency around advertising. So right now, if you are served an ad on Facebook in Ireland or in Canada, you will actually see who posted the ad, why you were targeted, and how much they are spending. So you can see that that is going to create greater accountability and transparency where politics and elections is concerned, and that can only be a good thing. Other things that came up were transparency, and again, Mr. Manfred Weber asked some pretty shrewd questions, I have to say. I know a lot of us digital marketing commentators were fairly underwhelmed when we watched the politicians in the United States question Mark Zuckerberg. We just felt that they didn't get or understand his business model or how Facebook operated. So Mr. Weber asked Mr. Zuckerberg, will you open up your algorithm? Will you open it up so we can have greater transparency about what your company is doing? Now, he didn't directly answer that question, but it's very interesting that Mr. Weber has put that out in the ether. So we had a huge media scrum when Mark came out. He didn't answer any questions. One journalist did shout at him and said, "Mr. Zuckerberg, we want to know, how you're spending advertisers' money. We want more transparency. We want more accountability." But with his entourage around him, he just went straight out the door, and that was the last that we seen of him. He didn't engage with the media at all. It will be interesting to see if he has any reaction on his own Facebook profile, because we do know that he's quite active there. So that will be very, very interesting. Other takeaways from today: it was a very, very short session. Each of the politicians had 3 minutes, some went over, of course, as they normally do. But I think that took perhaps too much time, and we didn't get enough answers from Mr. Zuckerberg. But I think it was a statement that Mark was making, coming to Europe, trying to quell the fears among Europeans, but also among the very strong European institutions. Because if you think about it, Facebook have a very, very strong presence in Europe. Their European headquarters, their business headquarters of Europe are in Dublin, as we know. Most of their engineers are in London. They have data centers in Denmark. They also have one in Ireland. And so Europe is very important to them. It's very important to them. But we know that the European institutions are also very heavy on data protection, on competition law, and also on protecting data of citizens, and also upholding the truth, because we've seen what's happened in America. And many people on social media cannot decipher now between fact and fiction, and perhaps that's a symptom and a new problem that social media has brought. But there's definitely a responsibility on the social networks to stand up, and I think that the European politicians, or MEPs here today, were trying to get some of the answers. I think I have lots more digesting to do. I'm going to listen back to the Facebook Live, listen back to the audio of my interview with Manfred Weber, and I'd also love your feedback on what you thought of it. Was it very different to his appearance in Europe? I don't think he had a booster seat. That's one thing that I was looking for. I know he sat on a booster seat in the Congress. I think the chairs were a bit higher this time. Maybe they thought of that in advance of him coming along. But yeah, an interesting day. And of course, JSB Talks Digital always brings you the breaking news. I celebrated 100 podcasts on Friday. That was 2,500 hours of free digital and social media marketing content for you. So until next time, see you later.